from the book of Luke, chapter 16, beginning with verse 1. Gloria a ti, O Dios. Jesus said to the disciples, there was a wealthy landowner who, having received reports of a steward mismanaging the property, summoned the steward and said, "What's this I hear about you? Give me an account of your service, for it's about to come to an end." The steward thought, "What will I do next? My employer is going to fire me. I can't dig ditches. I'm ashamed to go begging. I have it. Here's a way to make sure that people will take me into their homes when I'm let go." So the steward called in each of the landowner's debtors. The steward said to the first, "How much do you owe my employer?" The debtor replied, 100 jars of oil. The steward said, "Take your invoice, sit down quickly and make it 50. To another, the steward said, "How much do you owe?" The answer came, 100 measures of wheat. And the steward said, "Take your invoice and make it 80. On hearing this, the owner gave this devious worker credit for being enterprising. Why? Because the children of this world are more astute in dealing with their own kind than are the children of light. So I tell you, make friends for yourselves through your use of this world's goods, so that when they fail you, you'll be welcomed into an eternal home. If you can trust others in little things, you can also trust them in greater. And anyone unjust in a slight matter will also be unjust in a greater. If you can't be trusted with filthy lucre, who will trust you with true riches? And if you haven't been trustworthy with someone else's money, who will give you your own? Subordinates can't have two superiors. Either they'll hate the one and love the other, or be attentive to the one and despise the other. You can't worship both God and money. The Pharisees, who were greedy, heard all this and began to deride Jesus. He said to them, "You justify yourselves in the eyes of mortals, but God reads your hearts. What people think is important, God holds in contempt." La palabra de Dios.
Today's reading is probably one of the most difficult passages to talk about, and it's every preacher's, every theologian's nightmare text. So if I get this wrong, it's not just me. So let me ask you this question today. What are you wearing today? Take a look at what you're wearing today. What does it say about you, about your values, your personality? What about your shoes? What does your shoes say about you? If you're at home, you may not be wearing shoes, but think about your favorite pair of shoes. What are they? And what does it say about who you are as a person? According to a kind-hearted mother of a gentleman from Alabama, Forrest Gump, he says that Mama always says that there's an awful lot you could tell about a person by the shoes they wear. So what does the shoes you're wearing today say about you? What does it say about your personality? If you're wearing boots, chances are you have a strong personality. In your values, you like to take control of situation, be in charge. If you're wearing dress shoes, loafers, chances are that you like to appear intelligent, mature, confident. If you're wearing clogs, Birkenstocks, chances are you love to spend time outdoor. Your values are outdoors. If you wear Vans like me, like I do, chances are is that you want everyone to know that you're an edgy person, that you're street smart and so on, and creative type. Similarly, at a grocery store, we can tell a lot about a person by what they put in their shopping cart, what kinds of foods they buy. Was it organic or not? Is it cheap food or expensive food and so on? We can tell a lot about a person, about what they value and what they like to do for fun, how they treat people, who they keep company with. Wherever our values are is where our hearts can be found. What we value and shape will shape the choices we make, how we earn our money, as well as how we spend our money, and how we engage with the world around us. So in today's reading of scripture, we read about a dishonest manager who realizes that he's about to lose his job because he misspent his employer's money. Because he doesn't want to do manual labor or receive handouts, he goes around to people who owes money and reduces what they owe. He does this in order with the hopes that they will be kind to him when in his hour of need. As he goes around and talks to all the people who owe his money, we begin to see how his values and priorities begin to change as he starts to look towards his future. Instead of hoarding money for himself, instead of ripping off his manager, he begins to live the kind of life, the kind of future that he wants to see, the kind of future that he wants to live in. According to scripture, to the story, the religious neighborhood watch gang walk away getting mad with Jesus because they didn't like how this story ends. The Pharisees believed that it was right for wealthy religious people to not only live in luxury, but to be seen as having an extravagant lifestyle. They saw them as kings in their own eyes and paraded their holiness so full of themselves that they strutted around in designer clothes while looking down at others. Another time, Jesus once described the religious neighborhood watch gang as nothing but like whitewashed tombs. So clean on the outside, but full of dead man bones. Jesus makes it clear that one cannot serve God or money, God and money. Either we give our worth to God or we give worth to our investment portfolio and what's in our banks and the security, or we give worth to the security that money gives us. To worship is to give worth, to give something a worth, or give value to something. If we worship, it is because we consider that thing or person or object, such as money, to be of such value that we choose to alter our lives around it in order to make room for it in our lives. And that we cannot stop thinking about that. It inhabits our way of living. It's like the air that we breathe. It's hard to escape. Having said that, it can feel like the world revolves around money. And it's like the air that we breathe. Every election cycle, economy becomes an issue. Wars are generally started because of money or the lack of it. Just look at the war in Ukraine. That is because of money. Ukraine has a rich reserve of natural resources and is considered to be the breadbasket of Europe. In order to make money, you need to spend money. In order to get credit to buy a house or a car, you need to spend money. Even the simple question, when we meet someone new for the first time, we often ask, so what do you do for a living? Whether we realize it or not, that is about money. That is so how ingrained it is, our culture is. And then when we hear what people do for a living, we secretly judge in our hearts about what their chosen line of works. We all do that. And let's take this further. Time is money. How we spend our energy is money. Our reputation is worth money. It will cost us something. Who we hang out with, the right crowd, who we want to be seen with. Jesus calls his disciples, his followers, to be shrewd. Jesus was shrewd with how he used his time and who he hung out with. He was shrewd about his money. He had no money. Jesus was even shrewd with the people he hung out with. He was called a drunkard, for example, by his critics, by the religious neighborhood watch gang. He risked his time and reputation and became a nobody for our sake. Jesus was shrewd for the big picture, for God's dream for our world to be realized, where the first shall be last and the last shall be first. Money was an issue in Jesus' day. And money is still an issue in our day. It just changes faces. Today we live in this capitalism. Capitalism has become our empire. Everywhere we look, money is worship. It's all about a portfolio of stocks, about having enough to retire on, having a good job and everything. What does it mean to be shrewd in our day and age? Instead of asking, for example, what people do for a living, right? We can become shrewd and say, instead of asking people what they do for a living, ask them questions like, what brings you joy in life? What brings you life? What's the name of the chapter that you're in your life right now? And we can flip the narrative. The early church was shrewd. With their time and energy, resources, possessions, they shared with one another, had everything in common. They freely shared with all, including people who were not part of their tribe. It was their shrewdness that challenged the empire of the day and ultimately changed the world. Shane Claiborne once said, when someone asks us if we are Christians, I think the best answer is to tell them to ask the poor, the incarcerated, the immigrants and refugees, the widows, the orphans, the least of these. They will tell you who the real Christians are. And so, my question for you today, how do we respond to Jesus' call to be shrewd? What does it mean to be salt and light? To be shrewd, it's a big picture. It's to look at the big picture, where our heart lies, where our treasure can be found. So I invite you to find someone you don't know or someone you feel comfortable and to discuss that question. If you don't want to have time for self-reflection, that is okay as well. So one of the values that we hold as a community, we honor the wisdom of everyone here. So we practice the practice of one-on-one conversation. It's never an obligation and only an invitation. So I believe Lavita is gonna break out groups online, one-on-ones, and we will reflect for 10 minutes, I believe, and then we will come back.